Okay, we are live. Welcome to I Love Being Sober. My name's Tim Westbrook. I am your host. And so everybody knows, or everybody has seen the person that works a 12-step program that's not able to stay sober. And there's a guy, let's call him Bob. So Bob, I see at meetings on a regular basis. Bob goes to meetings every single day. He's worked the steps multiple times. He has a sponsor. He's actually had multiple sponsors. He has sponsored guys, yet he's still not able to stay clean and sober. He's still struggling. And I've got Dr. Georgia Forless here. And Dr. Georgia, I'm gonna ask you, what's going on with Bob? Why is he not able to stay sober?
Well, I don't know, Bob, but my guess would be that he is struggling with probably other issues, underlying issues that may have led to his drinking in the first place, or consequences of his drinking that he's never handled, relationship problems, trauma issues, something like that.
And just so everybody knows, Dr. Georgia Forless is the clinical director of workshops at the Rio Retreat Center at the Meadows. She's been working in behavioral health care for 20 years. She's in long-term recovery herself. So she has seen lots and lots and lots of cases. I personally am an advocate of the 12 steps. I worked the 12 steps. I've gone to 3,000 hours worth of meetings. I've worked the steps. I've sponsored people. I have a sponsor currently that I still work with. I still go to meetings. I'm still connected. However, I know that there's way more to it than just the 12 steps. And there are some people that need more than just the 12 steps to stay clean and sober. And so that's why I brought Dr. Forless here today to talk about recovery beyond the 12 steps. So welcome to the show. I'm so grateful to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about you, and tell me a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today.
So my journey is a little interesting. I got my master's degree when I was really young, when I was only 24 years old. I got my master's degree to be a therapist. I had always used drugs and alcohol, and had used them to cope with life and to cope with different issues from my childhood. And I got my master's. I kind of had a track of education. I fell off a little bit, wasn't doing well in high school, then went to college, did really well. After I graduated college, I fell into a pit of addiction, and it got really bad. And I went to treatment multiple times, and I went to 12-step meetings. By multiple times, I'm embarrassed to admit how many times I went to treatment. It was a lot.
Like, can you count that? Can you count them on your hands?
Like over 10.
Okay, so
if you count inpatient and outpatient and detox, it was more than 10.
Okay.
Brick to the head recovery. That's what I get.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I went to a lot of different treatments and it did not stick until I went to a very long-term treatment. I would just say courtesy of the state of Pennsylvania. They sent me into a longer-term treatment, and I started to get it. It was kind of like I was away from my normal self long enough, and I was exposed to 12-step and a therapeutic community long enough to really start getting it. And I still probably didn't think I was going to stay clean or sober.
When did you first realize you had a problem with drugs and alcohol?
I knew I had a problem probably in high school.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that I didn't think the problem was drugs and alcohol. I thought the problem was the friends I hung out with, or, the kind of drugs I was doing, or that, whatever it was, all the external things. I thought it was all these other external things that were the problem rather than me. And so when I finally got into longer term treatment, got some pretty intensive therapy, it started making me look at things differently.
Okay, so for you now, how did you first go to treatment the first time? Was it, or you went multiple times? Did you ever want to go yourself, or was it an intervention? Did your parents make you go? How did that work?
I typically wanted to go myself because I would have really big consequences. That were the desperation, right? So the foxhole thing. I'd have really big consequences. Oh my God, please help me out of this one. I'll do whatever it takes. And then, I didn't do whatever it took.
Right. Yeah. God, please, if you get me out of this, I'll never drink again. I'll never use again.
Out of all of those treatments, I only completed 3.
What's your opinion on because you see this all the time. We see this all the time. People leave AMA. They're like, you know what? I'm good. I don't need this. I think I'm cured. Like, what's your opinion of that?
My opinion, based on my experience, is you will keep finding lower and lower bottoms until you either get recovery or you die.
And unfortunately, I've been around long enough to see lots of people
Me too.
die. I mean, it's so sad. It's so sad. And being in the business that we're in, and I just, it's like Dr. Michael Sucher says, it's better for someone to stay one day too long than to leave one day too early. And it's kind of like if you have a broken arm. You have a broken arm, you take the cast off too early, you re-break your arm, you go back to a broken arm, right?
Yep.
Because if you just keep it on a couple days longer, you're giving yourself more insurance, I guess is what you can call it, right?
Yeah, and I went myself to a sober home, to a recovery home, and I have seen a lot of people that have done long-term treatment followed by recovery homes with 12-step recovery. That has really been beneficial for them. And I've seen some stumbling blocks for people.
Right. So you say long-term recovery is what worked for you. Why do you think long-term recovery was what worked for you?
Well, I mean, primarily because I think long-term using was what didn't work for me.
Okay. Right.
I had been doing it for a long time, and I had a long time of convincing myself that I was not in need of all the things that everyone else needed. I was a therapist, so I was pretty sure I didn't need the advanced therapeutic interventions or 12-step or anything that other people needed. I mean, I convinced myself my college degree and my graduate classes in addictions would be probably enough to have me intellectualize myself. I'm a smart person. I figured I could smart my way out of it.
Yeah.
I was wrong.
Okay, so in and out of treatment multiple times, and I take it you had worked the steps, you had a sponsor, you were I guess doing the deal at times, right?
Not often.
Okay.
I do it very, very short periods of time. 30 days of treatment, and as I said, I didn't complete many of them. The ones that I didn't complete, I'd be lucky to make it 72 hours without using again. The ones that I did complete, it was, I did not think I needed to do all the aftercare recommendations.
Yeah.
Until the last treatment, where I was in a therapeutic community for months and months and months. I think I was in there 9 months in the actual therapeutic community, and then went to a recovery house afterwards.
Wow. And a lot of times what I see, and I'm sure you see this as well, is people at the end of 30 or 60 days of treatment, they're like, I'm good, I got this. And to your point, they drank and they used for a long time. So to expect it to expect to be cured in 30 to 60 days is just not realistic, right? Because as soon as somebody leaves treatment, they're because when they're in treatment, they're in a bubble, right? They're protected. They're in a protected environment. They get up at the same time. They have breakfast. They go to group. They have an individual section. They have lunch. They do yoga. They have group. They go to dinner. Then they go to a 12-step meeting. And that's their schedule, right? So there's really the triggers of everyday life. They don't have to make any decisions, really. And so to expect them to go back into their old environment or back out on their own and live a healthy lifestyle is just not realistic.
Well, and add on top of that, the issues that they started using over anyway. Now, we know a ton of people in the world use over their childhood, use over breakups, use over whatever. Only some of us have the disease of addiction, right? Some people use over those things and they stop. There are other ones of us, like myself, who do not stop. And so when I'm in that treatment, am I really dealing with all of the issues that I used over before? And do I have enough ego strength after leaving treatment to address all the consequences and the big mess that I caused myself, my family, my loved ones while I was using? It's a lot. And 30 days, while it's a wonderful start, may not be enough for many people. It was not enough for me.
Right. Yeah. And you speaking to the wreckage that we caused, right? Like, I don't know about you, but for me, it took years. I mean, years to clean it. I mean, I've been sober for a little over 9 years, and I'm like, I still got stuff I'm dealing with. And it's the healthy lifestyle, the healthy behaviors, the healthy friends, the healthy hobbies, the healthy interests, like all of those things need to change in order for us to stick with long-term recovery, because it really is a different life, right?
Absolutely.
So what happened when you were in long-term treatment? Like, what was the difference when you were in long-term treatment? What happened during that 9-month period of time that helped you realize that, like, where you saw the light, or whatever you want to call it?
Well, first of all, the therapist helped me to look at the underlying issues. Okay. The fact that I'd been bullied as a child, the fact that I'd been in domestic violence relationships, all of the other things that had led up to me really falling into the pit that I fell in, led up to my using, contributed to that. Secondly, helping me look at my BS. I'm really smart. I'm a really good manipulator. But you know who I manipulate most? Me.
Right. Yeah.
And so I needed someone. I was lied to myself a lot. And so I needed someone to really be able to help me break through the barriers of my own self-deception and self-manipulation, and really shine a light on the parts of myself that I didn't want to see. And that really made a difference. And just being away long enough, being away and having therapy long enough that I got past the haze.
Right. Right. It's like if you look at step 1 is you get clean and sober, you get dried out. And then our brains, our minds are still jumbled, right? And we've got to get to a place where we're thinking clearly, and you're still engaged in therapy, and things start to unravel. They just don't unravel that quickly. And then what happened after your long-term treatment? What made you decide that you wanted to go to sober living?
Well, I really didn't think, I mean, I had a choice. I had a house that I could have returned to. But if I was, because the therapist had helped me see my self-deception so well, I recognized that I needed more. I needed more help before putting myself, because I recognized how many times I went back out and used again. I recognized all my failed treatment and 12-step efforts, and I needed to put myself in a safe, transitional area and place in my life so that I could continue to get the help while easing back into a life and dealing with all of my consequences and all of my long-term issues that I had. And I see that with a lot of people, that the mistake that they make is wanting to, and I know you know this, jumping from step 1 to step 9. I admit that I'm powerless. My life's unmanageable. I'm so sorry, everybody. And then they don't have the ego strength to accept what people do with that. They have other addictions. You've heard it, I'm sure. We call it whack-a-mole. Right. Food addiction, sex addiction, gaming addiction, you name it, gambling addiction, other addictions start to show up. And we can't look at them as clearly. Like, drugs are a pretty big addiction. Drugs and alcohol are addictions that are pretty evident. Mm-hmm. After a while anyway. Some of the other addictions can be hidden better.
Yep. Okay, so do you think you could have gotten sober without going through treatment?
No.
Do you think you could have gotten sober without the 12 steps?
No.
You needed both.
I needed that and more.
Okay. How long did you stay in sober living?
Sober living, I was there. I thought I was going to go for a month or two. I ended up staying about 4 to 5 months.
That's awesome. And it's almost like what I see is, it's almost like you got to stay until you don't want to leave. Right?
Great point. Yes.
Yeah. It's like, you've got to stay and people that's, what, I'm ready to go. I just don't want to be here anymore. Those are the people that should stay.
Agreed.
And then the people that say, I'm not really ready to leave yet. Those people are much closer to being ready. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree, because those are the people that I think are most honest with themselves. They're most honest with themselves about their own tendencies and most honest with themselves about the true power of addiction.
Right.
Which is not, I'm ready to leave and I'm good.
I'm good. I got this. As they still drive by the old neighborhood, as they still, and it's unfortunate. I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, I didn't really hang out with my other friends for a while, like a couple of years.
Oh yeah.
Because those other friends were, that would have been too triggering for me. I just wasn't ready for it. So what, in your opinion, what are the key ingredients to a successful recovery?
Of course, the first ingredient always is abstinence.
Right.
Not using. But I think the other key ingredients to recovery are really connection, being connected to other people, like-minded people who are going to really call you out on your stuff, people who are going to be honest enough with you that they don't care if you get upset with them. Mm-hmm. Finding purpose, finding some purpose. It can be anything, but finding it can be anything healthy. Yeah. Finding a healthy purpose.
Right.
Spirituality, I believe, is important, and I don't equate that to religion. I believe that people can find spirituality in a lot of different ways. And so I believe finding something greater than us is a very big key. I love nature. I know a lot of people who struggle with religion really like to look at nature and the power of nature. Taking care of business is another key ingredient, like not letting things go, not procrastinating. When I see something coming up for myself, I address it. I don't shelve it or put it aside or hope it goes away on its own, because I know better. And then I think one of the other big things is introspection. Being able to not look at whose fault it is out here or what's going on out here that's causing problems, but being able to look at what's going on in here that's causing problems. The one thing that I learned in recovery is I can only change what I take responsibility for.
Right.
And it doesn't mean I'm responsible for abuse that happened to me or anything like that. I'm not saying that I'm not responsible for those things. However, I am responsible for what I do with those things today.
Right. But I think it's being responsible versus being a victim, right?
Yes.
It's like taking responsibility, and yeah.
And you can be both, right? Yeah. People can be victimized and still take responsibility for addressing the issues and the trauma that happened to them and not allowing them to stay in that victim mentality. There's a difference between acknowledging victimization and staying in a victim mentality.
Right. And what is the difference?
The difference is the victim mentality allows us to continue to look to external sources as the cause of our pain, which then leads them to also need to change for us to change.
Right.
Those things caused us pain for sure. And my former abusers are not going to come back and make that stuff right for me. It's just not going to happen. So I have to be right with it. I always say closure with other people is a fantasy.
Right.
If I go back to my, I mentioned domestic violence relationships, for example. If I go back to the people I was in domestic violence relationships with, and I try to get some kind of, spiritual and wonderful closure with them, I'm probably setting myself up for failure in that. However, if I can look at the damage that it did to me and take responsibility for healing my own damage and healing myself, then I've stepped away from victim mentality and acknowledged my victimization and then empowered myself to be a survivor rather than a victim.
Right.
And there's a big difference there between survivor and victim, I believe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like I can't control other people, right? And if I'm expecting somebody else to make an apology, if I'm expecting somebody else to make an amends to me, which I don't know about you, but when I was early on in recovery, I'm like, oh, he owes me an amends, and today I've realized that that doesn't do anything, right? It's like I've got to take responsibility. The reason why I make amends to people is because I want to keep my side of the street clean. I want to keep my conscience clean, and I want to keep I want to stay on the path of recovery for me.
Absolutely.
And then when I start expecting someone else to make an amends to me, then those are expectations, and as they say, expectations are resentments waiting to happen, which that just is a bad, goes down a bad road for me.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, well, I will admit though, I still sometimes would like those amends from those other people.
Right. Exactly.
I think that would be nice.
Yeah.
I can't live my life waiting for it.
Yeah, exactly. If we're sitting there waiting around for it, that's it's going to cause stress for sure. Okay. So let's talk about the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're in this COVID-19 environment. What are you seeing in your space in treatment? I mean, I'm seeing a lot. What are you seeing?
I'm seeing a lot as well. I mean, I'm seeing people really struggling. I'm seeing anxiety's up, depression is up, self-harm, suicidal ideation, overdoses are up right now. Everything is up. People are isolated. People are stuck. I'm going to use the word stuck, though I know not everyone feels that way, but some people feel stuck at home with their families or their children. While they love their families and their children, they usually have more breaks. They usually go out and do more things. Distance from family, particularly elderly family and family with illnesses. There's a lot of distance. I've seen a lot of people really suffering from losing family members. I lost my father-in-law, and my partner was not able to go see his father from COVID. He died from COVID, and he was not able to go see his dad. And it was in Pennsylvania, We went back after everything was, after he passed away, we went back. We drove because my partner also he's in recovery as well. And he has his own vulnerabilities health-wise. So we drove cross country. I flew back. He stayed there and handled stuff. But a lot of family stressors, a lot of relationship stressors, a lot of fear, a lot of confusion, a lot of division. People are very confused about facts, and there's a lot of division and arguments about what is a fact and what is not, and how should the governor handle this and how shouldn't he. And people seem to be arguing more, and that is not just because of COVID. That's also our social and political environment, but COVID as well. And then I would say probably the two most profound things would be loss. People are experiencing a ton of loss, whether it is loss of their regular self-care activities, like for a lot of people, in-person meetings, the loss of their friends that they normally saw, loss of ability, I know we can do it now, but even for a while, just to go get your hair cut. There's a lot of losses there, losses of jobs, loss of financial security. And then I think the other thing that I see a lot of people really struggling with is just the nature of this being everywhere. It has absolutely overwhelmed our lives and the lives of everyone in the world. So there's kind of this dark cloud of doom and gloom, fairly, but people are really being impacted by that.
Yeah, and it's I mean, what I'm seeing, so first off, you've got the social distancing, no 12-step meetings in person, which we both know it's like there's way more than just the meet. I mean, yeah, Zoom is better than no meeting at all, but what about the meeting before the meeting? What about the meeting after the meeting? What about just being able to socialize with people and connect with people? As they say, the opposite of human connection is addiction. So for us to not be able to connect as humans is really, really makes things really, really tough. And then gyms being closed, you couldn't get your hair cut for a while, and it's everywhere. I mean, fortunately, a lot of the things that I do, like I run, I bike, I swim, and so there's some things that I do to where I'm able to connect with other people, but not everybody has that type of a lifestyle where they are still communicating with people. I can't even imagine. I mean, for a while, there are times where I'm at home all day long, every single day, by myself, on the phone, on Zoom, and it's just like we need to connect with other people.
And Tim, what about just the hugs? For some people, a hug after a meeting is the only human touch they receive ever, because they live at home alone, they're single, they may have become a little bit of a hermit through their drinking and using. They may not have family that has accepted them back. Yeah. And so just the human touch, so many people are missing that.
I also think that there are people out there, and I know that there are people out there because I've heard stories of people, and especially the white collar worker that works from home. They're not going into an office. They're not out causing problems. They're not out drinking and driving. They're not so they're not getting in trouble. So they're at home and they're isolating. They still have a job. They're still working, but they're drinking and doing drugs and just and bad things are happening. So it's like, when are we going to get to a place where these people realize, like, hey, I need to go and get help?
Well, you're right. And I had a friend just tell me that it was a friend of mine is dating a teacher. And I said, oh, are they back in the classroom? What are they doing? And what my friend said is, well, they're still doing online classes, but they had to go back in the classroom because so many of the teachers were day drinking during their teaching.
That makes sense. Yeah.
That makes sense to me too.
Yeah. I mean, it's like if you have alcoholic tendencies and you're at home all day, you're probably gonna, I mean, it's gonna be a lot easier to drink, and it's harder to get help.
And as we know, because it happened to me and it's happened to so many people, as we know, people who may have the disease of addiction but have another focus cannot fall into that pit of despair. Like while I was getting my college education, my master's degree, I knew in high school I was having some problems.
Yeah.
But then I got a focus. And I still used, but I used throughout all of college and grad school, but I was able to do so, I don't know, functionally, whatever that means. I don't even know. But I was able to do it and it not be noticed by others or by me as a problem. And then after I got my degree and I was kind of in a more calm space, the addiction took over. And that's what I think it may be happening to some people now. People that didn't really recognize that they had a problem. Now they're home so much, as you mentioned. There's so much opportunity to drink and do whatever that I think we're going to see people's stuff kick up. And it might not just be with alcohol, pornography, gaming.
Yep.
A lot of isolative stuff that I think is going to spending, gambling, online gambling, I understand is really kicking up right now. So I think we're going to see a lot. And those are some of the things that people in recovery, I know I mentioned to you earlier before we started here, there are a lot of people in recovery who start being clean, being sober, but still feeling like they're living dirty. Right? Yep. They're still doing pornography, cheating on their partners, being dishonest, racking up debt, whatever it is, right? Whatever it is. And those are some of the things that we sometimes need outside help for.
Right. Those are the alcoholic behaviors.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, the alcoholic behavior is just transferred onto something else.
Yep, the alcoholic behavior. You go from drinking and using to it can be anything from a sugar addiction, nicotine, Facebook, gambling, pornography, having multiple affairs. I mean, like there's a lot that people, there are a lot of things and a lot of behaviors that people transfer to I guess soothe the pain, because really there's more to it. There's something underneath that they're not dealing with.
Right, because the problem is, we both know, the problem isn't the alcohol or the drugs.
Right.
The problem is our compulsive behaviors. The problem is our need to have a different reality, right? Whether it's through fantasy, whether we're numbing out, whatever it is for us, we all have something. But we have to be able to deal with our underlying issues so that we're able to have a full and happy life. We also see people that are in recovery. They aren't living dirty. They aren't relapsing, and they aren't happy. They just have not dealt with their issues, and whatever it is that led them to use in the first place, or whatever it is they were trying to medicate, they never dealt with that. And so they continue to not feel connected to others, to feel insecure, or, feel like they are an underachiever, under-earner, overeater, under-exerciser, whatever it is.
Yeah, that makes, as you're talking, it kind of made me think about when I first got sober and I worked the steps and I really learned. I remember I had my very first intimate connection with another man, and when I say an intimate connection, you know what I mean. It's really a deep connection beyond just a surface level conversation, and it's like you have to learn how to open up and share and be honest and tell on yourself and do the next right thing. And that's how we're going to get closer to being in recovery. And that's because when we stuff those things down, that's when we get depressed. That's when we feel guilty and full of shame. Right.
Absolutely. And when you say that, what I think about is boundaries.
Right.
Because while you, it sounds like, had some difficulty allowing yourself to be connected to another person, you were scared of that. So was I. There are other people who have dependency issues where they become overly dependent on the first person that talks to them in a meeting or the sponsor, and their unrealistic expectations of and their dependency needs lead them to be disappointed by everyone who doesn't kind of stay in that super connected place with them. So we either need to set our boundaries so that we can be more connected to other people, have those intimate moments, allow ourselves that gift, or not. I'm sure you've heard it. I've heard it called take hostages.
Right.
With our emotional needs, and there are a lot of boundary issues around that.
How does somebody learn to have healthy boundaries? Because we grow up the way that we grow up, right? In the environment and the people that we're around, and our parents and our siblings and our aunts and our uncles and our employers. Like, how does a person learn to have healthy boundaries if they don't have healthy boundaries?
I think there are a lot of different ways to learn. I think some people do learn some of that in the 12-step meetings, but I think people with much more distorted boundaries need extra help. They need to go deal with what they grew up with. They need to, I talked about victim versus survivor. Where I work, we have a workshop called Survivors, which is all about looking at your childhood abuse, childhood trauma. And some people think like, oh, I didn't have childhood trauma. I had a pretty decent family. People are usually shocked when we define what childhood trauma actually is, because not all of it feels bad, right? Sometimes our family have been enmeshing or given us too much power and let us make too many decisions at too young of an age, too much responsibility. So we learn boundaries by going to therapists, going to workshops, and learning what are boundaries, how are mine askew, what do I need to do to change them? An example in my life. So being that I had been in domestic violence relationships, I was terrible at saying no. I just didn't say no when I was younger. I was a yes person, and it could be anything, to please don't break up with me even though I just hit you, to can I have a cigarette even if it's your last one, can I get $5, whatever. I was just yes to everything because I didn't want to deal with people being mad at me for saying no. I didn't want to deal with that. And so I had to learn how to say no to people. I had to learn how to stop saying yes when I didn't want to. I had to learn how to say no when I needed to protect myself, regardless if the other people's feelings were hurt. That was hard to do. It was hard to say no and accept like that they thought I was a jerk or, I'm selfish or whatever it was. And to sit in that.
Right. It's as they say, it's none of my business what other people think of me.
But that's hard.
It is
right?
hard.
Like for me, as a person who was extremely bullied as a child, I needed people to not bully me. Right. And so I tried to make people like me. And we have a lot of people like that.
How, in your opinion, how important is it for someone to have healthy boundaries, or for someone to learn how to have healthy boundaries?
I mean, it's as important as staying in recovery. Because how else are we going to say no to that person that pressures us to have a drink? That person that's like, come on, you can just have one. Come on. Right. Just come to this party with me. It's not that big of a deal. Boundaries are essential in recovery. Without boundaries, we're going to find ourselves stepped all over, either a doormat, we're going to find ourselves relapsing, or we're going to find ourselves not having any friends, because the other opposite extreme is people who have very walled off boundaries. I mean, we all know someone like that, right? You can't be friends with them. They don't let anybody in at all. And that robs themselves of the connections that we make in recovery. I think it's essential.
So let's talk about boundaries on social media. How can someone have healthy boundaries on social media?
Well, I mean, I think we'd need to know what healthy boundaries even look like on social media. I mean, because it's going to be different for everybody.
Uh-huh.
You know, as a person in recovery and a person who works in therapy, who's a therapist, I work with the community. For me, my boundaries are that I don't put political, religious stuff like that on social media, nor do I engage in arguments, even though, trust me, there are some things up there that I desperately want to argue.
Right.
I have really strong opinions and feelings about a lot of things.
Yeah.
And how much do I want to engage in that? Social media is really a kind of the best example we have in the world right now of lack of boundaries.
Right. I mean, I don't know about you, but I can end up going to a dark place. I mean, that's why I from a personal standpoint, I kind of leave my opinions at the door. It's as they say, pause when agitated or doubtful. And I normally bite my tongue and just move on and forget about it.
Yes, agreed. I mean, I feel the same way about just email responses to some things, right? Sometimes I'll type them out and then tell myself, don't send that.
Yeah.
If it still feels important tomorrow, maybe.
Yeah. You can't send that. I can totally relate to that. Okay. So tell me about what you do at the Meadows. Let's talk about the Meadows for a minute and what you do at the Meadows. And so tell me about that.
Thank you. The Meadows, I mean, and I'm sure most people in Phoenix area, I don't know how many people listen to your podcast, but most people have probably heard of the Meadows, and they've probably heard of our inpatient treatment center. We also have a lot of other programs, though. We don't just have inpatient treatment. We don't just have outpatient. I work in workshops. And what workshops are is they're a 5-day, typically, not all of them are 5 days, but most of them are 5-day deep dive into one of the areas that are causing people problems in their recovery. How I always frame workshops is some people are not in recovery when they come. They don't even know that they need to be. So we don't bring people in that are actively using or that are in active addiction of any sort, process addictions included. But sometimes this will be a way to build a foundation or realize that you need more help. But more often, people in recovery come to workshops in an effort to launch themselves over the obstacles or hurdles that have been the cause of their trip ups in recovery, whether that means relapses, whether that means, saying I'm clean but living dirty, or whether that means that I am living clean, but I'm just not happy at all. I feel like I should be happy. I'm clean. My family accepts me again. I don't have all these consequences, but I just can't be happy. We have a lot of different workshops. We deal with childhood trauma. That's our most popular, Survivors. It's been around for 30 plus years. Mm-hmm. We run it every single week. All of our inpatient treatment centers do it, as well as people who just come for 5 days, just come for Survivors. And we have people coming every week of the year for that. We have
just to speak to that, I went to Survivors after I was 5 years sober, and it was one of the best things I did. It was awesome. I mean, it's like and I know lots of other people that are in recovery. They've been in recovery for a few years, and it's like, okay, I think I need to go back and do a little more work, and it was fantastic. So anybody out there that's listening, if you've been sober for a minute and you think that you might want to go and do some sort of a workshop, Survivors is fantastic.
And it is one way that a lot of people learn boundaries.
Yeah.
So some people come to Survivors and it's the first time that they've actually had someone lay out boundaries for them, and what that means and how to set them. We have Survivors 2, which is it can either be a continuation of Survivors 1, doing more family of origin trauma. We get people that have a ton of childhood and family of origin trauma, or you can start looking at your adult trauma in there. We have Thrive, which is a different type of look at trauma. It's psychodramatic approach to child or adult trauma. And we have a bunch of sexual addiction related workshops. We see a lot of people struggling with sexual addiction. We have one for men, one for women. We don't put them together. We have a Partners of Sex Addicts workshop for people that have been in partnership and been betrayed. Betrayal trauma is real. It's very debilitating, and people need some help. We have couples workshops, family workshops. We have eating disorder workshops. We have an equine workshop that addresses boundaries specifically. We have a grief and loss workshop. We have love addiction, love avoidance, which is excellent for people that find themselves boundaryless or overly boundaried in relationships. We've got a ton of workshops that are primarily people in recovery or people that are starting their journey.
Right. Okay, so I've got a couple more questions for you. So being that you were a person that went in and out of treatment and you thought you knew everything, you thought you had the answers, you thought you didn't need long-term treatment. So what is your message to that person that's just like you? What would you say to you?
Well, so there was this assignment that I got, and it was kind of a rude assignment, honestly. The person that gave it to me, as soon as I got it, I was like, that's so rude, but it was actually one of the best assignments that I've ever done. It was actually 2 parts, and it was, if I'm so smart, why do I act so stupid? And if I'm so right, how have things gone so wrong for me? And they told me 10 pages each, because the therapist that gave me this said, you're really smart, so I'm pretty sure the first 5 pages of each one will be flowery BS. Yep. And so 10 pages each. And I was really offended when I got that assignment. But honestly, that was one of the best assignments I was ever given, because it made me look at those things, right? I am smart and I am continuing to act really stupid. And I do think I'm right about a lot of things, and I am, but I'm also wrong about a lot of things, and I have difficulty looking at that. So things were going really wrong in my life. And so it really challenged me to have those 2 parts of myself, right? The smart right part, yeah, and the acting stupid. And she said, you're not stupid. Please don't ever hear me saying you are stupid, but you act that way sometimes. And the acting stupid, things go wrong for me, part of myself had to meet and get real.
I love it. I love it. I mean, for anybody out there that thinks that they have all the answers, which there's alcoholics and drug addicts are really smart, really manipulative. And I don't know. And just like you, I can convince myself of anything. It's as my friend Walter always says, I need to be listening to somebody else besides Tim.
Yeah.
Tim needs to listen to somebody besides Tim.
Right. And that's the other key to recovery. You just nailed it in my mind, is living in consultation.
Yep.
And that consultation may be in the form of other addicts and alcoholics in recovery. But the truth is, there are some issues we deal with that other addicts and alcoholics in recovery that don't have any experience in dealing with trauma, they don't know how to guide us in. And so then we need to live in consultation with experts, with people who do know how to guide us through those things, and who also deeply understand addiction.
Right. Awesome. Good answer. Okay, last question. And this is kind of a standard question that I've started asking. Tell me about your morning routine.
My morning routine? Mm-hmm. So my morning routine is that I wake up earlier than I need to, and I give myself plenty of time to get ready. Mm-hmm. And I spend time looking at the news, but I only look at the news through comedy outlets.
Okay.
So like Stephen Colbert, John Oliver. Otherwise, I can't tolerate it.
Right.
And then I go downstairs. That's while I'm still getting ready upstairs. I do all that. I have an upstairs and a downstairs. I go downstairs. I spend quite a bit of time right before I go down cuddling with my cat.
Okay.
I love, that's a big deal to me, is cuddling with my animals.
Gotta get your love in, right?
I love it.
Yeah.
And so then I go downstairs. I spend time it depends what the day is. So I might spend time reading some things I do it online. I'm a big online person. Mm-hmm. So I look at either motivational things, funny things. I'm a dreamer. I have a lot of dreams at night. So it kind of depends what my dreams were like.
Okay.
If they were lightweight dreams, then I might just look at motivational. If I have heavy dreams, I tend to look at funny things in the morning. Okay. It might just be cat videos.
Awesome.
But I like to start my day with laughs.
Okay, that sounds awesome. How important is your morning routine to your day?
Very important. And I would say the most important part to me, I have a history. I used to be a procrastinator. And the most important part to me is getting up early enough that I'm not rushing. I have to give myself plenty of time to look at those funny things or those motivational things, to give myself time to cuddle with my cat. I have to give myself time. If I rush in the morning, my whole day is really difficult. I never find my footing.
I can totally relate. That's one of the best things that I have learned how to do in recovery is give myself enough time. I get up early. I don't like rushing around. I don't like rushing out the door. It's giving myself enough time to do all the things that I need to do to feel good, to feel grounded, and to have an amazing day. And I would say that 99% of the time, that's how my days get started. So
me too. And to me, it's big time about being early. Once I get to work and the workday starts, I'm going to be rushing around.
Yep.
Right. I'm helping people. I'm helping the therapist help people. I'm dealing with people that are, in distress or just want some attention in their recovery journey. And so it's really important to me to get here early. I drink water in the morning. I'm not a coffee drinker. Weirdly, the only addiction I probably never picked up is coffee.
Wow.
But I'll come in, settle in, allow myself to ease into my workday before it starts. So being early is a big deal to me. It's not to everyone, but it is to me.
Yep. Awesome. Well, Georgia, thank you so much. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
No, not that I can really think of. I guess, what I said earlier, I guess I'll repeat it just because I think living in consultation is essential. And I don't think that everyone does enough living in consultation. Kind of like you said, if Tim's the one making the decisions, if George is the one making the decisions without checking with anyone, it's not necessarily a good thing.
Right.
So I think that despite how many treatments I went to, I spent a lot of money on them. Treatment is expensive. Therapy is expensive. And I second mortgaged my house to do a lot of the things that I did at that time, a lot of the treatment I received. And I don't regret it for a minute. It was worth the investment because now I see the outcomes of it. I didn't have a doctorate back then. I see how the investment pays off in the long run now.
Awesome. Thanks again so much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Tim.
Bye, everybody.